Allison Williams, when we spoke a couple of years ago about Girls, you said how much Marnie had changed from season 1 through to season 4. How did she end up changing from season 1 through to season 6?
So much. I feel like she changed a lot in those last 2 years. Some things happened to her. A lot of things happened to her. And eventually enough things happened to her that she actually started thinking about herself more critically and turning that, let's say, critical eye that she has about other people inward. And I actually left feeling a lot of hope for Marnie. I don't want to give too much away, but where she's left as the series concludes is a place where I feel very good about her future. I feel very confident that she's going to be okay, which has not always been the case as the season is drawn to a close. But especially after season 5 with the dissolution of her marriage to Desi and how ill-fated and unwise that was, which was so abundantly obvious to anyone watching the show and so totally unclear to her until it was very, very clear to her. I think there's a lot of growth, and I think that I'm happy to report I think she took advantage of that opportunity in a big way.
How you said she turned the focus of criticism from others onto herself. What do you think she felt at the end was the biggest self-critique that she had?
I think that, well, I think that her biggest flaw overall was that rather than working backwards from who she is to try to find a goal or a destination that she wants to reach, she would often pick the destination first and then try to reverse engineer herself to retrofit that identity that she wanted. So whether it was someone in the art world, someone who is dating someone in the art world, a singer-songwriter, the right girl to match with Desi, it often felt pretty uncomfortable. And a lot of the weird choices she made were in reaction and in response to that. Whereas in the end, we start seeing her make choices that are more driven by who she is at her core than some hypothetical version of herself that she sees on the horizon that she might want to achieve eventually. So I found that really encouraging. And I think that the reason that didn't happen sooner is just that she didn't have other ways to ground herself. So often it was a man who allowed her to feel stable, and thus she would kind of let her roots sink in around that guy. And when the guy disappeared or when it didn't work out, she was completely thrust back into outer space and totally lost again. So yeah, I think that's been a big part of her life. And then also, I think if you mess up enough times and if you err in such big ways enough times, it becomes really tricky to criticize other people for erring in the same way. It starts to feel very hypocritical. Not that that's something that she's immune to altogether, even towards the end, but she starts to become a little bit self-aware. And the benefits of self-awareness are never ending. It will allow her to make fun of herself and kind of diffuse what precedes people about how pulled together and sort of presentable she seems at all times, and kind of take the legs out from under that and be more relatable to the people that she interacts with. I think it'll continue to serve her through the rest of her life.
She says towards the end of the season, I don't need to be happy. It's not my time to be happy. Yeah. Where do you think she, like, how do you think that ties in with her decision to sort of be with Hannah and help her raise this child at the end of the series?
Well, I think that Marnie feels almost this obligation towards suffering, or towards allowing herself to feel lost and unhappy and lonely, to allow herself to feel negative emotions without blunting them in some way as she has before. I don't want to root it in any kind of a religion, but that going through a guilt process before coming out the other end, feels like almost what Marnie's going through. And I can relate to that. I also think there's a part of her that thinks that that's what she's supposed to say as a friend, and in response to Hannah's mom is like, well, my happiness is irrelevant because this is a gesture of me being a good person. This is about Hannah and the baby. But I think there is something eating away at her that's wondering if it's fair to sort of superimpose Hannah and Grover's happiness over her own at this moment in her life. But I do think that what she says in the end is honest. I think that because she likes rules, again, working backwards from things about her organically, because she likes rules, law might be a good idea. So I kind of foresee her studying for the exams while she's living in the house and applying to law schools. And then she'll kind of stick around doing that. But that direction and that vision will give her an extra boost of happiness that she hasn't experienced for some time. I think it'll be great for her to look at herself as an intellectual for the first time, potentially since she was in college. She hasn't led with her intellect, and yet because she and Hannah are close and because they met in an academic atmosphere, it's hard for me to imagine that Marnie isn't at least bookish when she allows herself to be. So I think she'll get a lot of positive feedback from that transition. And, you know, the act of subjecting herself to something less than happiness, while I think is healthy and kind of opposite of millennial pursuits in a lot of ways, is certainly not sustainable. And I also don't think it's permanent.
I wonder if it comes to a place where she was pursuing happiness so sort of furiously through men and maybe even her music that, and it ended with so little happiness that she's trying something different.
Yeah, because I think, again, that those pursuits were, the origin was misplaced. The origin was outside of her. It was some goal. If I had turned to my parents when I was a little girl and was this sort of shy, reserved, you know, very withdrawn and internal and interior kid with no proclivity for make-believe or whatever, and I had announced to them, or at least sort of muttered to them in that persona, I'd like to be an actor someday, it would be a lot more confusing. And especially if my explanation for it was, that seems like a fun life to live, and that seems like a fun career path, rather than the dancing, singing, prancing around, performative little girl that I was, looking at my parents saying, I'd like to be an actress one day, which is clearly an expression of something that's already in there. Working backwards from the set of characteristics I had as a little girl, you would have eventually come to the career of actor, because it would kind of be the only option. In any other career, I think I'd drive everyone around me crazy, but those qualities that are insane work very well in this line of work. And I think Marnie has driven people insane with her pursuit of rules. I mean, someone who likes rules almost laughably does not belong in the art world. Ditto the music business, where it's about creative expression and about digging deep and mining yourself for what's happening and expressing yourself in different ways and through different media. That is not Marnie's milieu. She belongs somewhere where 1 + 1 is 2, and it's always going to be 2, and that's the only answer. And the fact that she found herself there eventually means that I think she's in for a future where more of the choices she makes are choices that are motivated by something inside her and something true and fundamental to her, rather than an aspirational version of some other Marnie out there, a platonic alternative, so to speak.
What was the last scene you shot?
The last scene we shot was the last time we see Marnie on camera, when she's sitting out on the front steps with Hannah's mom, and then they hear Grover crying and Hannah gets up to go get the baby, which made it so much more emotional. The fact that that was the last scene we shot was really heavy, because it was also the last time I was ever going to look at Lena while she was Hannah. And that was really weird. So our characters were kind of saying goodbye to each other, and Lena and I were saying goodbye to each other only as co-stars. We still talk nearly every day. And I assume Marnie and Hannah are still talking nearly every day, but we don't get to be part of that anymore. And so it was a really weird, really emotional moment, and Jenny Connor was directing, and I started to get emotional towards the end. And that moment, while hefty because it's one of the last of the series, is not one that calls for overt emotion. And so as Jenny started to see me kind of losing control of my sadness at the impending conclusion to our show, she sort of thought, oh, I don't think Allison can do any more of these. Or by the end, it'll be this sort of incongruously tearful, sure, go get the baby. Like, it just wouldn't have made any sense whatsoever in the context of the scene. So she had to kind of call it quits before we had done, I think we got through 2 or 3 of them before we had to pull the plug, so to speak.
How is your feelings when they called cut on that last scene compared to how you felt when they called action on your first 6 years ago?
What a great question. Nerves for both moments, but for completely opposing reasons. Nerves the first time because I just thought, here goes this adventure. I don't know where it will take me. I hope I don't fuck it up. There are plenty of opportunities for me to do that, and I'm sure I did it many times. And then at the other end of the spectrum, it was nerves because I just was like begging for it not to be so. I was begging for that not to be it. And I had gone through this whole experience, and I come out the other end so grateful and in love with this job, and so not on board emotionally with the conclusion of the show, although I do think it was the right time to end it. I just didn't want them to say cut, because that really meant that I was done. And already we were far into our shooting schedule, so there was really no hoping for reshoot at some point where we'd surprise, we all have to get back together and finish this thing. Like, this was really going to be it. And I just felt like desperate for that not to be the case. And probably that first day of work, I know that Lena and I were both a little bit nervous. She had already, I think she'd shot a lot more than I had at that point, and I'd spent time on set, so at least I wasn't like totally confused about what was happening around me. I'd done a lot of jobs on sets, but I'd never acted professionally on camera in that way. And so I had a lot of nerves associated with that too. Like, do I know how to do this? I've been talking about doing this since I was little, but now I'm about to do it, and I really hope I can do it. It's a little too late if I haven't, and I'm about to waste a lot of people's money and time if I'm terrible. But it's really hard to put those things out of your head. Pretty much all of acting is being able to either thrust those aside completely so you can just exist in whatever's happening, respond logically to what people around you are saying. And in both of those instances, my heightened nerves and emotions about those moments really threatened to override what my actual job was, which is so ironic. And those 2 moments where it mattered a lot, my feelings about the work and the people around me and what was happening threatened to kind of derail me from it entirely.
Go through a few of you, like, we'll just quickly hit on a couple of moments. What's your favorite moment on Girls from the whole series?
God, come on. To watch, to shoot.
I'm gonna say, what do you think the most important moment for Marnie was?
I think it was probably the moment where she told Desi she didn't want to be married to him anymore, which happens in season 5, episode 6, after her long adventure with Charlie, resulting in a long walk from probably Bushwick to the Lower East Side of Manhattan. I think because I've always wanted to know what she thought about on that walk. Did she interact with anyone? What happened? Was she disgusted by the bare feet, or was she kind of numb to them? I just think that the fact that when she arrived back at the apartment and Desi's sitting there, the first thing she probably thought she was gonna do was like start canceling her credit cards, get a new cell phone, make an appointment to go to the DMV to renew her license, because she had everything had been taken from her. And she was probably mostly anxious initially about what to tell Desi about her wedding and engagement rings. And then at some point during that walk, it became clear to her that those rings didn't really mean all that much to her anymore, and that letting them go and letting him go was for the best. And I just liked that kind of exhausted resignation and resolution. on Marnie's part. She wasn't fighting anymore to uphold this version of herself that no longer rang true or felt like it was elemental to her in any way. I really liked that. And to me, that bode well for what was to come on her journey. That's definitely one of my favorites. I mean, all my favorite moments for her are moments of growth and strength and positivity, even when they don't look it. Another moment I really loved for Marnie was just this last season when she's talking to the guy who works at the pawn shop, and she gets schooled. She always gets these lessons from very unexpected places, and this guy is no exception. She goes in thinking she's different from anyone who's ever pawned anything, and it turns out she's very, very similar, which he points out to her. And he kind of encourages her to take responsibility for things, which she's done a fairly masterful job of avoiding thus far. So yeah, those are some of my favorites.
What was the most fun scene for you to shoot?
Gosh. Well, really anytime all four of us were together was really fun. This dead air is probably really entertaining. I'm actually trying to really give it some thought. Yeah. There were a lot of things about the North Fork episode that were great, because we were all upstate or up on Long Island together. Gosh, yeah. Anytime we danced was really fun. There were a lot of moments that were incredibly fun. I mean, the truth of the matter is that most of the experience of shooting this show, like really almost all of it, with relatively few exceptions of, you know, inclement weather or whatever, were really fun. Even the scenes that aren't fun technically were fun to shoot because we all had a blast together and we had great directors and our crew was like the best. And so the whole experience actually, again, with the exception of like rain or 5 a.m. or whatever it may be, was pretty fun. And even those moments that were the hardest moments of shooting girls are still the better moments of any work that I can imagine. I mean, the fact that I was doing my job and I was bummed that it was a little rainy is insane. I mean, that's the luckiest girl in the world. So one of the added bonuses of doing girls is how much fun we had. And a lot of my favorite moments were just between shots on set, just together as a group. And yeah, I really look back on it so fondly. I'm looking right now at a framed photo of our first call sheet from girls on our first day of shooting the pilot. It's you know, it's a big part of my life, but I also leave little clues of it around my life to help remind me of this insane, wonderful journey that we've all been on together.
Was there a most awkward scene to shoot?
The one that just flew into my head when you said that was the scene with Booth Jonathan at his apartment when we're making an X shape on the bed, because I knew Jorma fine, but no matter how well you know someone, to have their whole body resting on your body, right, limb on top of limb, is really strange. It's just really strange. And so that was really weird and but really funny too. Awkward.
That's pretty awkward. That's pretty awkward.
Yeah, that was pretty awkward. If you're happy, I'm happy with that answer.
Yeah. They're not shooting thunder roaring.
Yeah, it's true.
I saw Get Out a couple weeks ago. You're horrifying in that. Like,
thank you. I don't know how to respond to that. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I had a question about I think your scariest moment in that movie is with the car keys. And when you're looking for the car keys in the bag, and it's sort of like you wait to the last possible moment to sort of switch and as it's setting in. Was that your choice as an actor of when to have that sort of pivot from frantically looking for the keys?
It was, gosh, we combed through that space of time from when Chris sees the photos in Rose's bedroom to the keys. We spent hours and hours talking through that span of time because Jordan realized very smartly that executed poorly, you lose the audience. The audience needs to be with Chris for every second of that. And so my job in those scenes was to deliver whatever thinking Jordan wanted the audience to be doing. So switching between, well, maybe she's also a victim to, wait a minute, I think she might be in on this. No, maybe she's hypnotized. No, she really seems like she wants to get out of this. So at any given moment, Jordan would give me a new objective, to use sort of, you know, professional parlance, to play in each of those moments, but they switched second to second. And so the result is hopefully this kind of tumbling list of assumptions that the audience is making, trying to justify this person that they've gotten to know with something they think she might also be doing. And I think when we filmed it, if memory serves, in those moments, when we were shooting the keys moment, I'd kind of do it on my own time. So Daniel, who was not on camera for those shots, would kind of yell for the keys and the camera beyond me reacting to that. And then at some point I would just decide to drop it. And usually it timed out with when I had my hand on the keys in the bag. Although for a lot of the takes, I was just holding them the entire time. But I think part of Rose's malice and her sinister just personality is that she's like a cat with a mouse, and she likes to draw it out as long as possible. And she likes to experience that sort of torturous confusion at the end where the photos have been seen, which she undoubtedly leaves as kind of a trap for him to see. And she almost likes seeing them panic and question things up until the very end. And her goal is to get Chris to the living room so that her dad can give the speech he insists on giving. And so it's her version of having fun with that moment, is kind of drawing it out to the last possible second when the tension is about to snap, and then revealing herself to be who she is. And then it's pretty rapid succession after that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was, it's whiplash for sure emotionally, because Rose is as good an actor or as bad an actor as I am. So in that moment, she's trying to seem like she's looking for the keys to convince Chris that running is not worth it. Waiting to see if Rose can give him the keys or if he can steal them from her is worth his while to try to make a break for it. So it was complicated, but we did talk it to death, and I hope the result was as suspenseful and confusing and wrought with different emotional responses to what was happening as possible.
For me, it was like the
I'm getting a 5-minute warning that I'm supposed to give you.
That's fine. It was for me, it was like sort of her cruelest moment, because there was less reason to maintain the facade than in previous scenes. So she was just doing it to sort of toy with him, if nothing else. We'll bring it back to. Well, sorry.
Just to comment on that, like technically after the auction, she needed to take him on a walk to get him out of the house so that the auction could happen.
Yeah.
But after the auction is over, technically he just needs to get down into the basement. But the whole orchestration of the I'll leave with you, we're in this together, I love you too, at the lakeside, walking back into the house with solidarity, that is all just in the spirit of harmony and trying to keep him calm so that it isn't stressful or violent in a way it doesn't need to. Because another sick side of it is that this procedure requires him to be in decent shape.
Yeah.
There can't be like a chase or something like that could.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, what she can't foresee is Rod, and Rod seeing the photo of Andre and then saying, you've got to get out of there. And then the trap she's set for a different kind of moment ends up being fallen into by Chris in a very heightened moment of anxiety, where usually maybe her boyfriend confronts her about it and the fight goes into the living room and then he's trapped, or however it typically works. Rod kind of throws a wrench in that. And so it's even more cruel when you think about the fact that none of that has to happen.
Yeah.
None of it has to happen. And of course, none of the whole movie needs to happen. This is an evil family. These are evil, evil people who don't look at Chris as being as human as they are. And so from that premise alone, it's not great.
Yeah. I've got 2 more girls' questions. Okay. First thing, Allison, I'm sure you get this all the time, but what is it like for Moxie, your dog, to watch girls?
She's sound asleep next to me. She's very bored by it. It's not her thing. She's not into it. She can appreciate it on an artistic basis, but she would rather watch tennis.
Fair enough. Dogs love balls. Like, it's
one of the fundamental characteristic property of a dog. Yeah.
Jemima Kirke helped me come up with that question when I spoke with her.
She did?
Yeah. She said, whatever you do, don't ask her what her dad thinks about the show.
Oh, good question. She's been through a lot of interviews with me. Yeah, that is one I get a lot. But the Moxie angle, I don't get a lot.
Yeah. Well, I said, who's someone I can ask about that she doesn't get asked about?
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. I love that. She's the best. Isn't she so fun?
Yeah, she was really fun.
Yeah, she's great.
What? And last question, what have you learnt about yourself from doing girls?
Well, it's fascinating because when we started, I was 22. And so my brain was still technically, I think, developing. And I was definitely not even really adult-like in a lot of ways yet. I had just graduated from college. And so I was finding my footing as an adult person, let alone a working person on an HBO show. And so initially Marnie and I were really similar. And then as time went on and she became more and more different, I kind of stayed who I was. And I actually learned a lot in contrast to her by kind of saying like, oh, that's abhorrent, whatever she did in that moment. I should never do that. Or trying to learn from her mistakes. And it's also a cathartic exercise to watch someone live out your worst ideas, showing up somewhere and performing a song. I don't think I ever would have done that, but the chances of me doing it were at least 0.0001% better had I not had the experience of being Marnie performing Stronger at an office party when no one wanted to hear it. That will never happen. It might not have happened anyway, but it definitely won't happen now that I've experienced it through Marnie. So I think I've learned a lot about a lot of meta lessons as well, just growing up. I mean, it's impossible for me to extricate my growing up from the experience of shooting this show because the two happened in concert with each other. And I think I have a lot of the stability I experience in my life. I have girls to thank for that, because it gave me the opportunity to not worry about work and have this kind of cyclical schedule every year where we shoot in the summer and then promote in the winter and then we do it all over again. Gave me a lot of space to grow up and become an adult. And so far I don't hate it. Adulthood is treating me pretty well. So fantastic.
Well, thanks so much for chatting with us, Allison. All the best for the Emmy Awards, for what's next for you, and everything like that. What, sorry?
When is the Emmy, like, when does that stuff happen? That feels very early.
It feels early now, yeah. Well, like, it's a long campaign. It's a long sort of season to give people time to watch the shows. The Emmy's September 16 or 14 or whatever the Sunday night is closest.
Good.
Yeah, it's good. And you said, is Moxie there with you right now?
She is. Hold on 1 second.
Oh, there we go.
You see her? She's sound asleep.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, well, good. We did.
Really,
good.
You know what she looks like in that position is those giant machines in Star Wars.
Yes.
On the snow planet Hoth.
Yeah. Definitely.
That's exactly what she looks like.
Oh, well, thanks, Allison. All the best for everything. Great chatting with you as always.
Work.
What, sorry?
Thanks for making this work. This